The Vampire Bride, a paranormal romance audiobook. Part 4, 26, present day. The manor's ballroom is a vision of opulence. Glistening chandeliers hang, casting a warm golden light that reflects off the polished marble floor, etched with intricate patterns of vines and flowers. Walls adorned with gold leaf and tapestries depict scenes of timeless elegance, and high windows draped in heavy velvet curtains reveal small, ornate balconies overlooking the estate's darkened grounds. Damian's hand rests lightly on my lower back, anchoring me amidst the swirl of opulent gowns and sharp tuxedos at the ball. I'm dressed in the most lavish gown, which shimmers with each movement, the fabric a river of molten gold that clings and flows gracefully down my body. The entire ensemble makes me feel like a figure stepped out of a fairy tale, destined for a night of magic and mystery. But my mind is elsewhere, in what awaits us after the party ends. A week ago, after Damian Cromwell had revealed the truth about the Accords and why vampires weren't allowed to bite werewolves, I'd been convinced things were going to end between me and Damian. But to my surprise, and his grandfather's, the fact that drinking my blood would essentially make him human, should he drink it often enough, hadn't deterred him in the least.
You mean I'll age?
Damian had asked, in a strange, almost hopeful tone.
Grow old like a regular human and die?
He'd looked stunned and vulnerable, almost as if this was too good to be true.
I hate being a vampire.
He'd then confessed, avoiding his grandfather's hardened stare.
No offense, Gramps, but I'd like nothing more than to be able to sleep, have food, and…
Drugs?
His grandfather asked, raising an unimpressed eyebrow, which had made Damian sigh.
Mostly, I'd love to be able to think about something other than blood all the time.
He'd replied.
Well, you'll still need some blood, or Chloe's to be more precise, should she become your bride. But I suppose as time goes by, you'll need it less and lose your powers, until you're eventually immortal. Just one that needs blood on occasion.
I'd only paid half attention to this, as Damian's last words had given me pause. I hadn't realized vampires struggled with the urge to drink so much. Maybe it wasn't a universal thing, but… I hadn't realized this was something you struggled with. I interrupt, looking at Damian apologetically. I wouldn't have urged you to drink from me this much if I'd known. That was incredibly insensitive of me. I'm sorry. Damian had scoffed affectionately.
I can't stop myself from drinking from her, yet she's the one apologizing.
He tells his grandfather with a wistful smile.
You see why I can't lose her, right?
Ian had given Damian an understanding look.
Chloe's an absolute angel,
He'd declared seriously.
I understand your inclination, Damian, but think of what it would mean for her to become your bride.
I'm happy to let him drink from me as much as he…
It's not that simple, though.
Ian interrupted. He'd then reminded us that it was imperative to keep vampires and werewolves in the dark about this secret, to prevent a full-blown war from beginning again between the two species, which was the entire reason behind the Accords. If a vampire, bonded to a werewolf, suddenly began to age, it wouldn't take very long until someone suspected something. Also, the very few vampires who were already in on the secret, such as Damian's mother, would abhor the idea of seeing him with a werewolf. Essentially, she'd want to ensure her son wouldn't become mortal once more, and I'd be in danger.
So if you two really insist on going through with this,
Ian concluded,
I suggest you go ahead with the bonding ceremony, acting as if Chloe is a human, and then once it's done, we will arrange for you to disappear forever. You'll be on your own.
Again, Damian had surprised me. He had no issue with leaving his world behind, a rather cold world in which he had no one but Ian and Rose, but who he said he'd take with us should we leave. However, he immediately worried about my reaction, thinking I'd never agreed to leave my family, my pack.
It's okay, Chloe.
He said.
This is too much. You couldn't possibly…
I'd taken his hand in mine and given it a kiss. My gaze examines the ballroom once more. Soon, we'll be gone from here forever. I can't believe I won't be seeing anyone from my pack ever again. I told Damian I'd go with him, claiming I wouldn't miss them. But that isn't entirely true. I'll miss them terribly. In an ideal world, I'd get to be with Damian. I'd get to be free of Nate without paying the ultimate price, and I'd get to have all that without losing my pack. The idea of never laughing with Emma, confiding in Harry, or even hearing Jake and Vivian argue has me on the verge of tears. I won't get to see the children from the pack grow up. I won't get to introduce Damian to my parents. But Damian and I can't be together openly, and running with him is my best chance at staying alive. I'll be away from Nate, and thus, hopefully, escape death. I wish things were different, but I'd already lost my pack long before meeting Damian. With or without him, my future could no longer lie with them. For my real secret isn't that I'm about to become a vampire's bride. It's that I'm still mated with Nate, a fact that's already condemned me to a packless life a long time ago. As soon as they'd learn about what I'd done, I'd be immediately kicked out anyway. So might as well save everyone the trouble, and save me the pain of seeing their disappointed looks, and just move on. Damian's blue gaze meets mine from across the room, instantly warming my heart. Somehow he's given me hope again, hope for a better, happier life, which won't be the one I expected or wanted, but which I know will fulfill nonetheless. For I cannot imagine true happiness that doesn't include him anymore. Hopefully, it won't be cut short. I still have trouble believing he wants me around, that he loves me. He says I view love as something too conditional, that I don't need to accomplish anything for him to love me. But it's hard for me to see things any other way. It's a very werewolf way of thinking to see love as conditional to performance. We live in packs, and everyone in the pack must contribute to the whole. Your place, the love others have for you, is directly linked to that contribution. And because I never contributed much, I always thought I wasn't worthy of love. Nate especially loves what can be admired, what can bring some shine onto him, though should never outshine him completely. And I know others, like Harry, for example, love me despite everything. But he himself is always putting others first, as if he doesn't deserve to be simply loved for who he is. And Vivian broke off her engagement with Jake the second he lost his chance to become alpha. It's not that we wolves cannot love, but what we are to the pack comes first. It's different with Damian. He doesn't expect me to be useful, which makes me wonder why he loves me. He doesn't have any expectations, and I'm not sure what to do with that. At least he needs my blood, I guess. So he won't abandon me, probably. Though, does this mean I've trapped him into being with me?
My Chloe.
Damian says, putting a hand on my lower back to whisper into my ear.
You look upset again.
I'm fine, I protest, turning to face him fully. He puts a hand on my cheek.
If this is too much and you'd rather not go through with it, we'll find another way.
He says, grazing my skin with his finger.
You just need to say the word.
This isn't too much, I tell him. It's me who's not enough. Damian frowns, searching my eyes. I'm such a mess of a person, I confess, lowering my eyes. I've been hiding things from my pack, from you. You deserve better, Damian.
Chloe, I promise you that I could live 100 lives, and the only thing worth sticking around for in any of them would always be you. You're more than enough. You're everything.
My words get stuck in my throat. How on earth am I supposed to respond to that? What can I possibly say to measure up to those words? You barely know me, I hear myself reply, instantly regretting it. Couldn't I think of something better to say to him, such as how much he means to me and that, despite us not knowing each other for very long, how he's become the best thing that ever happened to me? He deserves to hear it instead of lame protests and doubts, but somehow he just smiles and kisses my forehead like he's read my heart.
I do know you, my Chloe. I only hope that when you get to know me, you won't hate what you discover. Because I don't think I'll ever be able to let you go. I promise you that you'll always have me.
I'm about to reply, but the grand ballroom, The opulence of its golden chandeliers and shimmering silk gowns tightens around me like a vice. My eyes, roaming over the mingling crowd of elegantly dressed vampires and their guests, catch a trio of familiar figures weaving through the mass of bodies. My body freezes in place as I take in Harry's elegant profile, flanked by Vivian and Jake, the three of them so familiar, here amidst a sea of vampires that it gives me vertigo. My mind races, panic clawing at my throat. Why are they here? Have they come to take me home? Do they know I'm about to become Damian's bride? The implications of their presence here twist my stomach into knots. As if sensing my distress, Damian leans closer, his voice a whisper against the swell of orchestral music.
What's wrong?
My alpha is here, I manage to choke out, my voice a strained whisper. I grip Damian's arm tightly, my nails digging into the fabric of his suit. Damian's gaze follows the direction of my stare, spotting the trio. His expression remains unreadable, but his hand tightens around mine, a silent vow of protection. Why would they come to a vampire event like this? It doesn't make sense, I murmur, more to myself than to him. Each second they draw closer to where we stand heightens the terror gripping my heart. This is a disaster I can't believe I didn't see coming. They're going to tear Damian and me apart. I scan the room frantically, half expecting to see more pack members emerge from the shadows, all converging to prevent what they would see as a betrayal of our kind.
Chloe, calm down. Werewolves sometimes attend these events for diplomacy.
Damian reassures me, his tone steady. But diplomacy feels like a thin veil tonight, too fragile to cover the magnitude of what we are about to do. Damian, you don't understand. If they see the ceremony, if they realize what's happening... My voice trails off, the scenario unfolding in my mind like a car crash, except worse. I realize I'd been hoping to run away without ever having to bear witness to my pack's inevitable disappointment and betrayal. I realize how cowardly I've been, but that doesn't make me feel any braver for it. I don't think I'll be able to bear their judgment, especially not Harry's. He hasn't spotted me yet. He seems distracted, his gaze lost amongst the crowd but mine far away, his expression pinched in a displeased frown. Beside him, Viv and Jake are discussing something, though they aren't openly fighting. Damian's eyes scan the crowd, assessing, calculating.
Is there really not one of them you trust will understand? No one who will stand by you no matter what?
He asks, his tone light but his gaze as serious and assessing as I ever saw it. My mind races through the members of my pack. Each face flashing before my eyes brings a sting of betrayal, except one. Emma, I say, the name a soft balm to my fraying nerves. But she isn't here. A flicker of relief passes through Damian's eyes, mingling with a spark of something else. Resolve, perhaps?
Emma.
He says, with a small nod of understanding.
You're Alpha's mate, yes?
I frown. I don't remember ever telling him Emma was Harry's mate. Now that Damian knows about my pack, I've mentioned her, I'm sure, but...
I'm guessing Harry's the one who's not staring at the redhead, then?
Damian smirks. A small smile grazes my lips. No, Harry's the one in the blue suit, I reply.
Let me handle it,
Damian says. And before I can protest, he strides towards Harry, his posture relaxed but authoritative. My heart catches in my throat as I watch them shake hands. What is Damian thinking? The urge to follow prickles at me, but I force myself to stay put, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. From here, I can't hear what they're saying, the numerous conversations being held around the room droning out the one I want to listen to. They exchange a couple of words at most, and then Damian leads Harry away, towards one of the balconies, so they can speak in private. A cold sweat breaks across my forehead. Is Damian going to tell him? Ask for his permission. The thought that Harry will see me differently after learning the truth, that he might look at me with anything other than kindness, feels like a stab to the heart. Hopefully, Emma will put in a good word. She'd like Damian, I'm sure. I wish she was here, but I'm guessing Harry refused to bring her near any vampires. I imagine her pacing furiously around her bedroom as she waits for his return, a small smile tugging at my lips. She must be furious with him for leaving her behind, especially so soon after rekindling their bond, where their need for each other must be especially strong. Harry's not going to be in a good mood, I realize. I should probably step outside and help Damian explain our situation to him. He needs me. It's not fair that I leave him alone to face my problems. I take a step towards him, but a hand on my shoulder intercepts me.
You look ravishing, my dear.
Damian Cromwell tells me with a smile. He looks very dashing in his dark red suit, though my attention is quickly swept by his daughter, who's glaring at me like she's debating whether or not to throw me down the stairs.
Darling, don't you have anything you'd like to say to Chloe?
Ian presses, giving Alexandra a warning look. She purses her lips, disdain plain across her features.
I don't approve of this union.
She grits through her teeth.
Now.
Ian smiles, as if she just said something pleasant instead.
Chloe makes Damian happy.
Alexandra rolls her eyes before stepping away, though not without sending me one last venomous glare.
I, for one, am happy you'll be joining our family, Chloe.
Ian assures me, kindly.
Even if we won't be seeing each other often after tonight, I take it your affairs are in order?
He's asking if everything is ready for our departure, I'm guessing. I nod, feeling slightly better at the prospect of it.
Good.
Cromwell says.
I think my grandson is about done with his conversation. How about you join him outside?
My gaze travels back to Damian, who's standing outside alone, Harry having gone back inside the room. He looks calm, or at least, not like he's seconds away from dragging me away by force, which I guess is good news. Though, I'm left wondering what Damian has told him. Surely not the truth, for Harry wouldn't look so indifferent if he had. I quickly make my way to him outside, ignoring a couple of greetings as I walk past vaguely familiar faces. What did you tell him? I whisper to Damian as I arrive beside him.
Nothing important.
Damian replies, pulling me into his arms. Damian, I insist, moving away to search his expression.
I asked him to relay a message to your friend Emma on my behalf.
He sounds sincere. I think he's telling the truth. What kind of message? I ask with a frown.
All in good time.
Damian replies, placing a tender kiss on my forehead, leaving me dumbfounded. He briefly checks his watch, a grim smile grazing his lips.
Any time now.
He says. I'm guessing he's talking about the ceremony, and fear twists my stomach once more.
It's going to be fine.
Damian says.
Did you finish that book I gave you?
I frown, wondering why he's thinking about that at a moment like this.
I was rather hoping it would be a source of comfort to you, should anything happen.
Damian whispers into my ear.
Keep that in mind, all right?
I open my mouth, a series of questions about to spill. But that's when Damian is pulled away from me, and suddenly, in his place, stands someone I'd hoped I'd never see again.
Hello, baby.
Nate greets me with a thunderous expression. 27, present day. There was a time when looking at Nate's face, the light freckles on his nose, and the slightly green tint of his eyes under a certain light would bring me immense joy. I can't even remember how that felt now. All that I see upon seeing him is fear, a profound unease that's rooted in my very core. What are you doing here? I ask, glancing behind him at Damian, who's wincing from having essentially been thrown into a back wall. He looks fine, though.
What am I doing here?
Nate scoffs, fury burning in his gaze.
What are you doing here? And don't even think about lying to me.
He grabs my wrist, twisting it painfully, making me gasp.
Get away from her.
Damian says, getting back up. Nate ignores him, pulling me towards him.
You're not even sorry, are you? Some mate you are.
He sneers, further twisting my arm. Damian grabs his shoulder, forcing Nate away.
I said let her go.
I realize, too late, that he'd been expecting Nate to comply, and for good reason. A club full of silhouettes frozen in time flashes before my eyes, Damian could very well make anybody comply with his commands. He has the power to do so. Brief relief courses through me for a short, traitorous second. And then, Nate grabs him by the throat, and Damian's eyes widen in surprise.
The fuck do you think you are?
My mate growls, walking Damian backwards, squeezing his neck. Stop! I yell, throwing myself at Nate's back, trying to get him to let go. He shrugs me off.
Is that who you've been ignoring me for?
Nate sneers, eyes fixed on Damian.
A vampire, Chloe? Really?
Behind us, the altercation is attracting attention from the ballroom. I hear people moving towards us, wondering what's going on, though no one is jumping in to help. I rather think the vampires are enjoying the show,
Yeah.
Damian says, smirking despite the obvious pain he's in.
What does this say about you, do you think?
Nate screams in rage, and before I even have the chance to move, he's throwing Damian's body against the edge of the balcony and biting right into his neck. My scream gets stuck in my throat. Damian gasps, briefly grazing the bleeding injury with his fingers before Nate pushes him off the balcony, his body plunging down and out of view. This time I scream in horror, jumping onto Nate's back, encircling his neck with both my arms with all the strength I can muster.
Get off me.
Nate groans, surprised at the attack. I put more strength into my hold, desperation fueling my movements. He bit him. He bit Damian. Horror is clouding my thoughts as I try to ignore what this means for a few seconds more. The reality of it is too terrible to allow into my mind. Perhaps I've seen it wrong. Perhaps I've imagined it. Nate can't have bitten Damian. He can't, for that would mean people are screaming all around us. I see a couple of vampires running past us to look down below, probably searching for Damian.
Chloe.
Nate gasps. He moves backwards and my body collides violently with a wall, pain surging behind my eyes as my skull takes in most of the blow. I ignore it and squeeze my arms around Nate with all my strength, fury blinding everything else. I'm going to kill you, I mutter into his ear. And I mean it too. He's going to pay for what he did. He took everything from me. He's been ruining my life for years, and just as I was finally about to be happy again, he takes the person I love most away from me?
I can't breathe.
Nate groans, falling to his knees. Good, I reply, choking him harder. I want him dead. Nothing will make me feel better than to feel the life draining out of him.
Chloe!
A familiar voice booms behind me, making me freeze though I don't yet let go.
Chloe, stop!
Harry's voice rings into my ears, laced with an all-consuming command. My alpha is giving me an order, and though he may not be a vampire with the power of compulsion, for us wolves, commands like these from our alpha are just as effective. My wolf urges me to comply, and my arms loosen, releasing Nate on their own accord. I scream in frustration, sending Harry a betrayed look that I think surprises him, though I can't very well tell through my tears.
Chloe.
He says, moving a hand to reach me, but I recoil with a snarl. A horrified scream echoes from below us, beyond the borders of the balcony. I jump back to my feet as Vivian and Jake arrive to immobilize Nate. I don't care. I kick off my shoes and jump over the railing, down to the gardens. My eyes quickly fall onto a small crowd, gathered a little further away. I feel like I can't breathe as I run towards the group, pushing my way past protesting vampires without a thought. Damian lies at my feet, blood still dripping from the wound on his neck, eyes closed. No, I gasp, falling beside him to grasp at his shoulders. I try to shake him awake, but to no avail. There's blood on my hands now. I stare at it, disbelief and horror clenching my heart. There's so much blood. I stare and stare until, slowly, anguish is replaced by a strange sense of fascination I can't explain. I swiftly glance around me, careful to make sure no one is watching as I stick a finger dripping with Damian's blood into my mouth, promptly licking it off without a second thought. I don't have time to think about what I just did, as arms tighten around me, pulling me away. I try to shake them off, but I'm stunned into silence as Ian Cromwell enters my field of vision, kneeling beside Damian, terror marking his features.
He's dead.
A man who was already here before us tells him with a grim expression, confirming what I already knew. Ian shakes his head in disbelief.
He can't be.
He whispers, turning to Damian, trying to shake him in turn.
Werewolf bite.
Someone whispers from behind me, making Ian snap his face up towards me.
What's the meaning of this?
He asks in a thunderous voice. I feel my lips move, but I can't manage a sound. Nate killed him. He killed Damian. Damian, who's lying right there in front of me, motionless, when he was alive and well only moments ago.
Chloe!
Harry arrives beside me, wrapping his arms around me. My gaze snaps towards him, and for a moment I'm ate again and firmly believe he's going to fix everything for me and make the world better and right again. I wait for him to do so, but he just searches my expression, brows furrowed worriedly.
It was him.
Alexandra says, because she's there too now, and looking downright murderous. She's pointing towards Nate, who's regained consciousness and is being brought towards us by Jake and Viv, who are each holding on to one of his arms.
He's the one who killed my son.
She walks towards Nate, but is intercepted by Cromwell, who stops her with a hand.
Alexandra?
He grits out between his teeth.
He's a werewolf. We can't just kill him, he needs to stand trial.
He killed Damian. Everybody saw him.
She screeches, furious.
Because of her.
Alexandra points an accusing finger towards me, which would scare me except I don't have the strength to feel anything.
Don't you dare try to deny it. You know this, Wolf.
Harry's grip tightens around me in warning, but I ignore him. They can do whatever they want to me. I don't care anymore. Why would I? Yes, I whisper. I know him. He's my mate. He killed Damian because of me. Stunned whispers echo around me. Horrified gazes are exchanged.
He's not your mate anymore.
Vivian protests, but I interrupt her. Yes, he is. We're mated. This is all my fault. Slowly, I turn towards Ian Cromwell. Not for forgiveness exactly, for what I've done is irreparable, but maybe for understanding. To share my grief with him somehow.
You?
He says, recoiling in horror.
You betrayed us?
I burst into sobs.
I trusted you.
Damian's grandfather drones on, disgust twisting his features.
I stood by you. I supported your engagement with Damian despite everyone being against him entering a blood bond with an untrained...
A blood bond?
Harry interrupts, trying to meet my gaze.
What are you talking about? Chloe wouldn't...
My grandson loved you.
Cromwell snaps.
You manipulated him. You lied to him. Was this your intention all along, to have him killed?
I shake my head desperately. I'm aware everyone, vampires and werewolves alike, are staring at me. Mr. Cromwell, I'm so sorry. I choke. I never thought. It was never my intention.
It was never your intention to hide that you are a werewolf.
Cromwell's voice seems to boom around me, freezing me in place.
Really? Then how come no one, not even I, realized what you are?
He looks around the gathering crowd, jaw clenched.
We all should have. Surely there must be some magic involved for you to dupe us all like you have. And you want us to believe your intentions weren't deceitful from the beginning.
I gape at him, confusion taking over my senses. What is he talking about? He knows very well how I managed to hide that I was a werewolf. He's the one who ensured it. And why is he acting like he has no idea what I am when me being a wolf is precisely why he hired me? I open my mouth to ask him so, but he interrupts before I manage to say anything.
Take her away.
He barks as two vampires jump by my side to get me to my feet.
And don't try to stop me, Alpha.
Cromwell adds toward Harry.
She will stand trial, but mark my words, if we find out she and her mate were acting on your orders...
Fear snaps me into action. You know we weren't, I beg, trying to have Cromwell meet my gaze. Mr. Cromwell, you were the one who hired me.
Hired you?
Cromwell's dark gaze descends upon me, and, as cutting as any death sentence, he adds,
You insane fool, I did no such thing.
My heart stops. What is he saying? Is he denying it?
I would never hire a werewolf to be my grandson's bride.
He scoffs at the idea. You didn't hire me to be his bride. The vampires pull me to my feet under Harry's horrified gaze. But it's hard to think when all I can think about is Damian, lying right there before my eyes. Dead. You hired me to be his bodyguard. I murmur weakly, as I realize once more all the ways in which I failed Damian.
Chloe,
Harry snaps, briefly distracting me from Damian.
stop talking.
But it's true, I insist. Vivian was there, right, Vivian? I ask, turning to her, awaiting her support. But that support doesn't come. My heart sinks as I take in her stupefied expression. Vivian wouldn't lie. Not about this. But she looks like she really has no idea what's going on.
No, Chloe,
She whispers, briefly shaking her head in denial before pursing her lips shut.
we shall discuss this during her trial.
She says to Cromwell with a neutral expression.
When will it take place?
They start negotiating a date, but I don't listen, my mind reeling from what has just happened. Am I going insane? I remember meeting Cromwell with Vivian. I remember him explaining how Damian's life was in danger, how he wanted a werewolf to look after him. But then, he'd forbidden me from telling anyone, including Damian. And I now realize it's because no one would have believed I was his bride if they knew I was a wolf. For werewolf blood makes a vampire mortal. I recall how Damian had tried to use his powers against Nate earlier, to no avail. I think back on all the times he'd drunk from me recently. He'd lost his ability because of it, I realize. Because of me. The only person who knew about my real identity was Cromwell. The only person who knew I'd been Damian's bodyguard was Cromwell. He knows I've saved his life before. He even thanked me for letting Damian drink from me when he'd been poisoned. Surely he can't believe my intentions were all. Something clicks in my mind. How Damian had been taken to a club, which belongs to friends of the Cromwells. How Marco Rossi, the obvious culprit behind his kidnapping, didn't even seem to be aware of Damian's presence in his club. How I knew to give Damian some of my blood upon being poisoned, precisely because I'd been told to do so by Cromwell. Cromwell, who'd more or less encouraged it, despite knowing perfectly well that my blood could make Damian mortal. He never forbade me from letting him drink from me. In fact, it was almost like he wanted it to.
Chloe?
Nate whispers to me from beside me. We are both being held next to each other, hands behind our backs.
Where are we? What's going on?
He whispers, looking sincerely confused. My eyes widen in horror. Marco Rossi had no idea Damian was at his club. Nate has no idea what he's doing here. Neither Jake nor Vivian seem to have any recollection of me being hired to work as a bodyguard by the vampires, almost like their minds had been tampered with, which, I realize much too late, is precisely what happened. It was you! I screech in horror, trying to escape from the vampire's grasp to throw myself at Cromwell as I'm being dragged away. You did this! You killed him! Damian's grandfather watches me go, with a slight glint in his eyes, that seems to tell nobody but me. He knows very well no one will believe me.
You may not have killed him directly.
He tells me, gaze impenetrable.
But I will make you pay for harming my grandson.
And then, knowing fully well all eyes are on me, he smirks, as we both know the one behind Damian's death is none other than him. 28. 2 months ago, during a night of patrol. The vampire doesn't even try to fight me as I pull her off the human she'd been about to attack. Her victim, a young man, falls to the ground, seemingly unconscious. But I don't have time to check on him, as the vampire throws herself at me, forcing me to jump away. In the back of my mind, I try to sense how far Vivian is from me at the moment, if there's a chance she'd hear me should I call her. We probably shouldn't have split up earlier, but we thought we'd cover more grounds if we did, and had both been eager to go home, the night having stretched into the early hours of the morning. I need to immobilize this vampire and try to talk some sense into her. I duck a punch and raise my arm to parry another and another and another.
Stop.
The vampire says. I'm horrified to feel myself freeze into place, unable to move. This vampire has just used her compulsion powers on me, and it's as effective as I heard it can be. I try to get my limbs to move again, but they just won't work.
Relax.
The vampire tells me, and I instantly feel my shoulders loosen, a strange but pleasant sense of calm enveloping me.
I'm going to ask you a few questions, which you're going to answer truthfully.
The vampire tells me.
And then, I'm going to walk away, and once I'm gone, you'll forget you ever saw and spoke with me. Nod if you understand.
I nod.
What do you know about the Accords?
The vampire asks.
What did your alpha tell you about them?
I answer what I know, calmly. The Accords aim to prevent war between our species. They essentially say we can't bite each other.
That's all you know?
The vampire insists. I nod.
All right. Next question. How close are you with your pack? Do you get along with them?
Yes, I reply with a slight frown that doesn't escape the vampire's notice.
Yes, but
She insists, searching my face. I hesitate. I don't know if I should say this to a stranger.
you can trust me.
The vampire smiles.
I won't tell anyone, I promise.
I relax under her kind gaze. Of course I can trust her, I realize. I love my pack, but I'm afraid to be kicked out should my alpha find out what I've done. I confess, feeling immensely good as the words escape my lips. It's such a relief to finally be able to confide in someone.
Interesting.
The vampire tells me, eyes sparkling.
Tell me more.
They think I've broken my bond with my mate, I explain, mind pleasantly blank. And I have, but I've rekindled it in secret. If my alpha learns about this, he'll never forgive me. A tear escapes my eyes, which the vampire catches with her finger.
That's pretty good.
She says, taking out her phone from the pocket of her jeans. Another vampire arrives beside her, sending me a brief glance.
You think you found one?
He asks curiously, to the woman on the phone.
Maybe.
She replies.
Hey boss, it's me.
She says into the phone.
I think I may have found a good candidate for you. Yes, a girl.
She gives me an assessing glance.
Blonde, doe-eyed, very pretty. She's afraid of being kicked out of her pack. Yes, all right, we'll be right over.
The woman slams her phone shut.
Boss wants to see her?
Her friend asks, earning himself a nod.
We're going to take a little trip.
The vampire tells me, pointing towards a car that's just parking at the corner of the back alley we were fighting in.
You won't remember it either, after we're done.
I nod serenely as I step into the car.
You're lucky, you know.
The vampire tells me while we're driving off, God knows where. Not that I mind at all where we are going. I do feel lucky, now that I think about it.
It's not every day one of you wolves attracts the attention of a vampire king. We've been searching for a good candidate for months now.
Yes, I agree, nodding my head dazedly. For months now.
Do you think once he found what he's looking for, Cromwell won't let us attack humans anymore?
The vampire male asks my good, kind friend with a frown.
Surely not. It's against the Accords. Cromwell's not an idiot, though what he has in mind, I have no idea.
29. Present day, a few hours after Nate attacks Damian at the ball. Time blurs, measured only by the faint echoes of distant footsteps and the soft drip of water somewhere. The air thick and heavy with the musty scent of mold and the unmistakable chill of damp stone. My gown, once a sparkling cascade of gold, now clings coldly to my skin, each sequin a tiny shard of the shattered evening. I press my back against the rough stone wall of the cell, the uneven surface leaching the remaining warmth from my body, the sharp edges biting into my skin through the delicate fabric. The darkness here is almost palpable, swallowing the faint light trickling in from a small, barred window high above. It mirrors the desolation in my heart, a void where Damian's laughter and warmth once lived. Every shiver that courses through me is a stark reminder of his absence. each cold stone a testament to the harsh reality of my loss. The silence is oppressive, filled only with the echoes of my own ragged breathing and the distant, haunting drip of water. This cell is a tomb, not just for my body, but for every hope and dream that blossomed in Damian's presence. Now, all that remains is the cold, suffocating weight of a future without him. Ever since we've been locked in here, Nate in a cell next to mine, I've been assailed by images I can't make sense of. Dreamlike memories of me meeting Cromwell days before I'd gone to see him with Vivian. Bits of conversation I hadn't remembered until now, which I'm not even sure are even real. But the more time passes, the more vivid they become. How I'd been taken to see him, under the effects of compulsion. How he'd asked me questions about me, Nate, Harry, our pack. How he'd asked me if I had any secrets. How I'd react if he ever offered me a way out. How he'd spent some time molding my mind into being receptive to his ideas. The suggestion that working for him, as a bodyguard for his grandson, was the perfect solution to my problems. And how, when I'd see him again, soon, I'd accept his offer and work for him. And it's not the only memory that comes back to me either. I remember him coming to me in the evening after I'd moved in with Damian, urging me to seduce him, to tempt him into drinking from me. I shudder, nausea twisting my stomach as it all comes back to me in slow, tortuous waves. How it becomes evident that Cromwell hired me not to protect Damian as he claims, but to ensure his downfall in the most despicable ways. But why? I mutter to myself, kicking the bars of my cell angrily. It doesn't make any sense. Why wouldn't he just kill him and frame some random person, like Marco Rossi, for example? Why did he need me to become Damian's bride?
Who cares?
Nate groans from the cell next to mine.
We're as good as dead here.
Shut up, I snap at him, though sinking to my knees as his words truly reach me. Cromwell's plan was perfectly set up. Who's going to believe he'd ever knowingly let a werewolf become his heir's bride? It doesn't make any sense. And besides, everyone saw Nate killing Damian. My heart twists at the thought and new tears pour down my cheeks, sobs choking my throat. Nate is right. What does it matter? None of it matters now, with Damian gone.
Oh, will you stop crying?
Nate snaps, annoyed.
You're going to be fine. No way Harry and the others will let anything happen to you, all right? I'm the one who's going to get killed because of what happened.
I don't care what happens to me, I whisper into my knees.
Easy for you to say. You're not the one that's going to lose your head.
Two vampires interrupt our discussion by opening the door outside our cells and waving someone inside. I barely register, though my attention snaps into place as I recognize a familiar scent invading the room. Harry? I ask, stunned to see him walk past the guard to make his way towards me hurriedly. He's still dressed in the same suit as before, though looking slightly more disheveled, features drawn grimly and hair a mess. I don't dare meet his gaze and feel myself shrink into a ball, as if to hide myself from his sight.
Chloe,
I hear him ask, tone kind and patient.
how are you holding up?
I don't know what to say and would probably have stayed silent if I hadn't felt his fingers graze my arms through the prison's bar.
Look at me, kid.
I hear him say, with all the familiar warmth I'm used to from him but thought I'd never hear again. It washes over me like a balm, not erasing my pain exactly, but giving me the courage to meet his gaze. It's filled with worry and compassion. Harry, I whisper, throat tight. I'm so sorry about everything. I'm so ashamed.
No, Chloe. I'm the one who should be sorry.
He briefly squeezes my arm.
I'm your alpha. I should have protected you.
He looks so defeated, I wish I could throw myself into his arms, but all I can do is move slightly closer and grab his hand. Don't say that, I protest. You're not responsible for my mistakes. Harry's eyes snap towards Nate.
If anyone knows how difficult it is to break a mating bond, it's me.
He tells me, bringing fresh new tears to my eyes.
Of course, you struggle to stay away from him. and I hate that I made you feel as though you couldn't trust me with this.
His shoulders sag in defeat, stunning me silent. I'm such an idiot. I can't believe I ever thought Harry would do anything else but blame himself for my situation. Because of course he would. He always blames himself for everything. I'm crying once more, wondering if it'll ever stop. This is all my fault, I begin.
Heck yeah, it is.
A familiar voice interrupts. Shut up, Nate, I snap, fury lacing my words. For once in your life, just shut the fuck up. Somehow he miraculously complies. I turn back to Harry. I do trust you, I assure him, wanting with all my heart for him to stop torturing himself because of something I did. But after what Nate had done to Emma, Harry's hand clenches around mine while Nate snorts in disbelief.
I didn't do shit to Emma.
He scowls but immediately falls silent, head lowered in compliance, as Harry emits a low, menacing growl.
Don't say her name.
He warns, making both Nate and I wince, which doesn't escape my alpha's notice.
Sorry.
Harry tells me with a grimace. He takes a breath.
Chloe, I don't blame you for what he did. You know that. Neither does she.
But I got back together with him despite it. I protest. Even I don't understand it.
Oh, that's rich coming from you.
Nate intervenes once more.
I forgave you for nearly killing my sister, did I not?
I freeze. There it is, I think. That's what it always comes back to. He forgave me for Evie. How could I not forgive him for everything else?
Evie was going to attack a member of Chloe's pack.
Harry growls.
Chloe did what she could in an impossible situation. You, however, attacked a defenseless human girl.
He had. He'd attacked Emma while she was still human. He tried to kill Harry, and he killed Damian. Maybe not of his volition, as I suspect Cromwell was behind that too. I remember him asking me all about Nate now. He knew of our relationship, how possessive he would get. He knew it would seem believable that he'd attacked Damian out of jealousy. So maybe this isn't Nate's fault. But it doesn't matter. I'm through being guilted into loving him. This isn't what love is about. Love should be given freely and without expectations.
Chloe, what happened with that vampire? Is it true you were going to be his bride?
Harry asks me gravely. A part of me, the part that is afraid of what he'll think of me, wants to lie. But it's minuscule compared to the one who feels nothing but pride about my love for Damian. For who wouldn't feel lucky about having known him, and even more so, for having been loved by him in return? Yes, it's true, I reply, making Harry frown.
Despite the accords?
He sighs.
Was it because you were hoping to get away from him?
He asks, pointing towards Nate. I shake my head. It might have started out this way, and I was hoping to get away from Nate, that's true, but it's not the reason why I wanted to be with Damian. No, Harry. I agreed to be his bride because I love him, I answer truthfully, before crumbling as my own words catch up to me. Loved him? I rectify, shutting my eyes in despair.
How could you?
Nate snaps.
You're my mate.
You don't own me, I snap back. And you don't own my heart. It belongs to Damian. I chose to give it to him. Nate snarls, but doesn't reply as Harry shuts him off with a glare.
I'm very sorry for your loss.
He whispers, eyes devoid of judgment. I nod, throat too tight to reply.
We don't have much time.
Harry urges on.
I've come to tell you Ian Cromwell wants both your heads, and with how public Nate's attack was,
I wince but let Harry continue.
I don't see how we're going to be able to object to public retribution.
I nod, having expected nothing else. For a moment, I'm tempted to confide in Harry and tell him Cromwell was the one behind Damian's death, but I don't know how that could help me. If anything, it would only put Harry in danger if he knew. It could make him a target.
Which is why Viv and Jake will be back later tonight to get you out.
My eyes snap open. What?
Nate committed the crime. We'll till the vampires satisfy themselves with his death.
Harry, I'm not running away, I declare. What if they request that you pay for my crimes instead? Harry smiles grimly.
Then so be it.
I shake my head, anger driving me to speak louder. What about Emma? If anything were to happen to you, it would destroy her, Harry, and you know it. I see him flinch subtly.
I'm responsible for you.
He protests, though I can tell he feels torn. You can't choose me over Emma, I declare. You know you can't. Harry shuts his eyes, shame marking his features. Besides, I want justice for Damian, I explain, clenching my fists, and I'll have no chance of obtaining it by running away. Harry looks so conflicted I'd probably feel sorry for him if all my energy wasn't being spent on keeping strong for me to reach my goal. That goal being revenge, and making sure the traitorous bastard who'd used me to kill the man I loved paid for his crimes.
Chloe, once you're declared guilty, we won't be able to get you out.
Harry cautions, mouth pursed in a grim line. I send a mental apology to Emma, who's going to have a hard time making him feel better about this one. Then, so be it. I tell Harry, mimicking his previous words. 30. Present time. The day of the trial. The sharp clang of chains echoes off the stone walls, as Nate and I are escorted from our cold, dank cells to face what can only guess will be a mockery of justice. I don't see why we even need to stand trial. Ian Cromwell could very well use his compulsion powers to make everyone agree my mate and I deserve to die. Is there any point in pretending we stand a chance? I'm tired of pretending already. The guards lead us through narrow, shadowed corridors that spill into a vast, Gothic church set outside the city, its towering spires silhouetted against a steel-gray sky, promising rain, or perhaps forewarning tears from heaven. As we step inside, the constructions loom over us, its vaulted ceilings arching high above, cloaked in shadows that seem to seep into my soul. The air is heavy, musty with the scent of old incense and colder than the cells we just left, sending a shiver down my spine. All eyes are on us, a strange assembly of vampires and werewolves filling the pews of this sanctified hall-turned courtroom. They murmur among themselves, their voices a dissonant blend of outrage, curiosity, and fear. Stained glass windows fragment the dim light, casting colorful, eerie patterns on the stone floor. At the front, where the altar once promised salvation, Ian Cromwell stands with a gavel in hand, his presence dominating the room. His eyes, cold and calculating, sweep over the crowd before settling on me with a chilling finality, so unlike the warm, enthusiastic looks he used to give me. I can't help but feel betrayed. I trusted him. I'd grown fond of him. So did Damian. Damian, who I must stay strong for, I realize, as without him, his sister will probably be in danger since their grandfather isn't the supporting ally he'd made himself to look like. All Damian ever wanted was to protect Rose. I have to get out of this so I can make sure she's okay. I owe that to him at least. But things aren't looking very promising. I spot Harry, Vivian, and Jake amongst the crowd, and to my surprise, "Emma?" I murmur, upon meeting my best friend's blue gaze. She waves at me, jumping to her feet, and making her way towards me while I gape at her like a fish. What is she doing here? I can't believe Harry let her come anywhere near so many vampires. Vampires most likely hostile because of the attack on Damian. His protective instincts always kept her away from the darker facets of pack life until now. I don't know how Emma managed it, but I'm touched and grateful to see her as she reaches us with a grin, though not a very happy one. My vampire guard sneers at her, but she rolls her eyes, raising her hands in peace.
"Give us a second,"
she asks, serious and polite.
"We're from the same pack. She's like a sister to me."
The vampire sighs but pauses in his trail, the one handling Nate moving forward to the front without us.
"Chloe,"
Emma says, smiling tightly as she takes my hands in hers. The touch of her hands is both comforting and startling.
"You have the worst taste in men, you know that?"
"Emma, what are you doing here?" I whisper, shock and relief making my voice tremble. Her hands squeeze mine and a sharp pain jolts through me. I hold back a wince, feeling a small bead of blood welling up where her ring, a sharp, ornate piece I've never seen her wear before, has cut into my skin.
Oh no!
Emma smiles sheepishly.
Are you on your period? You smell like you're bleeding. Doesn't she smell like she's bleeding?
She adds to my vampire guard with an innocent smile.
I sure hope you guys provided her with tampons. I mean, that's like a basic human right.
My guard snarls at her, pushing her backwards under my stupefied gaze. What is she playing at? Also, why is Harry still in his seat watching all of this unfold like he doesn't have a care in the world? Is he letting Emma speak to vampires alone? He doesn't even react as one of them touches her openly. Something's not right. Are he and Emma fighting? That can't be it. Even if they were, I doubt it would dampen Harry's protective side. Emma offers me one more reassuring look before returning to her seat amidst the crowd, and I don't have time to think too long on what's going on. Because as I arrive at the front of the church, Cromwell's voice booms through the space, declaring the trial open.
We are here to uncover the truth behind the heinous acts against a noble of our community,
He announces, his gaze piercing. Every word he speaks feels like a nail being driven into the coffin they've already prepared for me in their minds. The weight of Damian's death presses heavily on me. The memory of his blue eyes, once filled with warmth and laughter, is now extinguished, and with it, any fear of what might happen to me here. But I can't let my despair prevent me from letting the truth be known. My heart aches, not just for the loss of love, but for the justice he deserves. As Cromwell continues to speak, the veneer of his cultivated composure does nothing to mask the malevolence I now know he harbors.
2 months ago, this woman manipulated her way into my grandson Damian's life and somehow convinced him to take her as his bride to weaken him with her werewolf blood.
Cromwell says, as I only half listen to his obvious lies. Me? Manipulating Damian? I snort. This man is the ultimate gaslighter. He's even worse than Nate, and that's saying something. Acting like his shoulders are heavy with sorrow he doesn't even feel. Like Damian's death wasn't exactly what he wanted. I hate him. I never hated someone so strongly in my entire life.
Chloe couldn't have known her blood would affect Damian in any way.
Harry objects, remarkably calm.
The Accords clearly state we aren't allowed to tell other wolves about that.
Cromwell's eyes briefly flash an annoyance before he schools his features into a more neutral and benevolent expression.
Forgive me, Dr. Sachs, but how do we know you haven't shared the information with her?
He replies, deceptively polite. I want to strangle him.
What is it you're implying here?
Harry replies,
That I've betrayed the Accords and purposely sent someone from my pack to harm your grandson?
his implications brought to light. Probably too soon to sound plausible at this point of the trial. Cromwell is forced to back down.
Of course not.
He says, inclining his head in a gesture of appeasement.
I have no doubt both our species are very much intent on keeping the peace between us.
Harry smiles at him tightly.
Good.
He says,
But just in case there's still some doubt, I'm happy for you to use your powers on me so I'm forced to tell the truth. I have nothing to hide.
Beside him, Emma visibly tenses, clearly not particularly fond of the idea.
That won't be necessary. We can trust each other without such drastic measures being put in place. Can't we not?
He sounds so convincing, like he wants to keep the peace. I can't make sense of his actions. Cromwell's known as the vampire thanks to whom the Accords were signed. But I'm left to wonder what his intentions were in setting up this truce in the first place. I now highly doubt he did it out of the kindness of his heart. I know for a fact there's no humanity left behind his composed, eccentric, fatherly facade. So, why did he set up the Accords? And why trick his own grandson, probably his own daughter, into falling right into his trap? Why kill Damian? And why use me and Nate in the process? I can't make sense of it. Is he hoping to start a war? He seems to be careful in how he deals with Harry. It doesn't look like he's eager to start a conflict with him. My mind is going in circles. Nothing makes sense anymore. Despite it, as Cromwell lays out the accusations, each word more absurd than the last, I steel myself. I may not care for my own fate, but for Damian, for what we had and what Cromwell has taken away, I will fight. This trial, this farce, will not go the way Cromwell intends. I resolve to unearth his deceit, to expose him for all to see, no matter the cost.
Chloe,
He tells me, indicating for me to stand.
we will now hear your deposition.
I resist the urge to roll my eyes as I stand to face the room.
How did you meet my grandson?
Cromwell asks from behind me, making me tense. You introduced us, I reply truthfully. You hired me to be his bodyguard. I hear Cromwell scoff.
I did no such thing.
He replies, crossing his arms. But you can't deny that there have been attempts made on Damian's life before I started working for you. I argue, gaze drifting towards Alexandra Cromwell. He'd been poisoned before, right? Damian's mother frowns distrustfully.
It's true.
She agrees reluctantly.
A vampire attempted to kidnap Damian in the past, and sometime after that, he was poisoned.
Cromwell, who's standing by her side, clenches his fists.
Yes, thank you, Alexandra.
He says, as intrigued murmurs echo amongst the crowd.
But that doesn't change the fact that
I didn't know Damian at the time, I say, briefly meeting Emma's gaze for support. So there was no reason for Nate to be behind these attempts.
it doesn't change the fact that everyone saw him bite Damian 2 days ago.
Cromwell replies curtly. All I'm saying is that people were after him, and you hired me to protect him. I snap, heart beating fast against my ribcage.
I did no such thing.
Cromwell insists, calmly.
I thought you were going to be his bride, and so did everyone here since my grandson died the night your blood bond ceremony was to take place.
I flinch, hands trembling.
Surely if you'd only been there for his protection, you wouldn't have agreed to go through such a binding commitment.
Cromwell drones on, unpityingly.
A blood bond is for life, after all. Why would you agree to it if Damian was just a job for you?
I loved him, I gasp, betrayal and pain shaking my words. You know I did. We came to you together to tell you.
You loved him, yet you never told him you were a werewolf. You lied to him.
Because you told me. I'm furious. You made me lie. You used your powers on me. Cromwell's eyes, fixed on me, briefly widen. I understand he hadn't expected me to tell everyone about how he used his compulsion on me. Did he expect that I wouldn't because he thought it would still be in effect? He sure looks stunned, that's for sure. Which makes me wonder, why isn't his compulsion still in effect then? In fact, why is it that I've been remembering all the times he'd used his powers on me when I hadn't been able to before? Something fierce and determined shines behind Cromwell's eyes, who's looking as dangerous as ever, a sinister expression descending upon his features.
Enough of this!
He snaps, waving at Nate to come forward.
He is your mate, is he not? And everyone saw him kill Damian. Do you deny that you bit him?
He asks Nate. Nate stands beside me, his posture resigned yet defiant. He doesn't meet my gaze, lost in his own turmoil or perhaps already defeated by the weight of his manipulated actions. My contempt for Cromwell deepens, a fiery blaze, in the cold enclosure of my heart.
Do you deny it?
Cromwell repeats.
No,
Nate's head sags in defeat.
I bit him.
Why?
Because
Nate's eyes become vacant and I realize he's saying something pre-hashed, and probably not by him.
I've been rejected from my pack, which has put a strain on Chloe and I's relationship. I thought, if I could convince you, Cromwell, to stop the increase of vampire attacks, it would get me back on my alpha's good side, and back into the pack.
I briefly meet Harry's eyes, who look as dubious as I feel. Doesn't give us time to intervene.
And you thought that harming my grandson would pressure me into helping?
Nate nods slowly, making the room burst into gasps again.
I didn't mean to kill him. That was accidental. I thought I would only scare you enough that you'd be motivated to help us to prevent another attack.
Cromwell clenches his fists dramatically, feigning an emotional anger I know for a fact he doesn't feel. Besides him, his daughter is shaking in anger too, though I don't know how sincere that is. She jumps to her feet, voice cracking.
How dare you?
She screams, pointing her finger at Nate.
We've been respecting the Accords for years, and this is how you repay us?
She buries her face into her hands, her shoulders shaking in silent sobs. I purse my lips. If this is an act, then it's rather good.
Did Chloe know about your intentions?
Cromwell asks Nate, unrelenting.
She did. She didn't like it, because she cared about Damian. But Chloe's my mate. Our bond will always come first, no matter what.
Nate's eyes drift towards me, and he adds, nailing the coffin.
She forgave me for harming her best friend. She forgave me for trying to kill our alpha. And she forgives me for killing a vampire she'd grown slightly fond of, but who could never compare to me and what we have in her heart.
Hearing those words, I scream in rage and plunge towards him, arms out, ready to strangle him. I can't even hear what's going on around us anymore. All my focus is on Nate. I want to make him pay for what he just said, and how close to the truth it is. The toxicity of our relationship rings raw behind his hurtful words. I'm hit with the ugliness of what lies between us, what has been eating at me for years. It's all very close to the truth. Except for one thing. I loved him, I yell, tears blurring my vision as strong arms hold me back, preventing me from hurting Nate. I loved him more than I've ever loved you, and if I could give your life to get him back, I wouldn't hesitate for a second. You sorry piece of—
Enough!
Cromwell shouts, making everyone effectively fall silent, to the point where I wonder if he hasn't perhaps used his powers to make it happen.
He confessed to his crime. My grandson is dead. This trial is over. I demand that the werewolves make amends by allowing Nate's execution and Chloe's lifelong imprisonment.
My breath catches in my throat as Nate's gaze meets mine. I may hate that we're bonded and hate what he's done, but I've never wanted him dead. And more importantly, I wasn't expecting I'd be allowed to live. I realized I'd been rather hoping for the relief of death. My heart is in shambles, and I'm tired of all of this. I have no reason left to live. Take me instead, I murmur, closing my eyes. I don't want to do this anymore.
I object.
Emma's voice booms across the room, making my eyes snap back open. She's standing amongst the crowd, a determined look upon her features. Jake and Vivian are staring at her, and Harry in turn, probably wondering what she's doing and if her mate is in on it. Harry's blank expression doesn't give anything away.
You object?
Cromwell lets out a stunned laugh.
To what exactly?
Emma frowns at him, undeterred.
To all of this,
She replies, waving her hand around the room. To her credit, she manages to stun Damian's evil grandfather silent for a second there.
I'm sorry, who are you?
He ends up saying, slightly confused.
Emma,
She answers before pointing to me.
Chloe's best friend.
Alexandra intervenes, sending Emma a disdainful glare.
Nobody cares who you are. My son is dead.
Yeah, about that.
Emma says, looking at her nails.
Is he really?
I freeze upon hearing her words. What is she doing? I know her, and I'm sure she has something in mind for, despite how it looks, she isn't actually insane, but— or is she perhaps under a vampire's control to be behaving so strangely? Also, why isn't Harry saying anything?
Of course he is.
Cromwell snaps.
Are you unwell, girl? What are we here for if not his demise? Your little friends here saw him. Your own mate saw him.
Yeah, I don't know, man.
Emma pouts.
Chloe was probably distraught. Harry's got terrible eyesight. And Jake and Viv,
She smirks at them.
for sure they were too busy arguing to check if Damian was, properly dead.
My jaw drop at the sheer ridiculousness of this statement, and I don't think it's the only one that does. Cromwell's eyebrows are raised so high you'd think they're about to fly off his face. Alexandra's eyes are so wide, she looks like a cartoon character. Meanwhile, Jake and Viv are trying to make Emma sit back down, and Harry is still completely unresponsive.
All I'm saying is,
Emma concludes.
who's to say you vampires haven't faked the guy's death to stir up trouble with us? You're the ones that have been attacking humans for months now and breaking the accords. Suspiciously convenient that in the middle of that, your vampire prince dies.
She concludes by putting air quotes around that last word.
Sounds to me like the perfect excuse to get you all off the hook. Just saying.
Cromwell is pinching the bridge of his nose, looking like he's about ready to implode. Around the room, though, a couple of werewolves have started speaking amongst themselves, doubt and suspicion crossing their features to my stunned amazement.
I demand that you show us the body again,
Emma says challengingly.
For in the famous words of the wise and all-knowing Taylor Swift, no body, no crime.
If Cromwell's eyes could fall out of their sockets, they would have.
Did she just quote a pop star to make a point?
I hear Vivian whisper to Jake, who elbows her in the stomach.
Show us the body.
He insists instead, getting to his feet beside Emma.
We all want to see it, right everyone?
All the werewolves present in the church erupt into agreement, looking highly agitated like they actually believe the vampires won't be able to comply with this request. Unfortunately for them, I know this isn't the case.
Very well.
Cromwell sighs with a roll of the eyes.
Bring Damian's body here.
He orders some of his staff. As they leave through a side door to comply with this request, agitation slowly ebbs away, the murmurs around us tapering off into silence, anticipation and dread mingling in the cold air of the church. My heart pounds painfully in my chest, each beat a stark reminder of the grim reality I'm about to face again. The heavy doors at the rear creak open, and two of Cromwell's people enter, solemnly carrying between them an open coffin. I can barely stand to look at it first. They set it down gently at the feet of the altar, amidst waves of shocked gasps. Damian lies there, his features serene, almost as if merely asleep. His pale skin contrasts starkly with the rich, dark velvet lining of the coffin. His black hair, always so carelessly perfect, fans out around his head like a dark halo, waves catching the dim light, casting shadows that play off his peaceful expression. The sight destroys what little courage and hope my poor heart still held into numb nothingness. He looks untouched by death, beautiful and still, as though at any moment he might draw a breath and sit up, flashing his charming, mischievous smile at me again. But the stillness of his body is a silent scream in the quiet church, tearing through me with a ferocity that is unbearable. Around me, I can hear the soft sounds of pity and whispered sorrow from the crowd, their earlier animosity forgotten in the face of such poignant finality. But the tears that well up in my eyes are born of a pain far deeper than their fleeting sympathies can fathom. Damian, I choke, feeling faint. I take a step forward instinctively, yearning to touch him as if the contact could somehow fill the lifeless void he's left behind.
Satisfied?
Cromwell asks Emma with an impatient grimace.
May I check the body from up close?
She replies, batting her eyelashes innocently.
No offense, but he's a vampire. If you guys lay down and close your eyes, you all look like corpses from a certain distance.
Offended protests are heard from the vampire area of the church, but Cromwell just sighs in resolve, waving my friend over to the front.
Fine.
He says.
Proceed.
Emma practically skips over there with so much bounce to her step, you'd think she was going shopping.
Wow,
she says, eyes widening slightly as she bends down over Damian's coffin to get a better look at him.
That is one attractive-looking man. Good on you, Chloe.
She adds, giving me a wink.
Are you quite done?
Cromwell snaps impatiently.
Of course not, I haven't even tickled him yet.
Emma snaps back, rolling her eyes.
You can always tell if someone's faking sleep by tickling them.
She tells the crowd.
True story.
Are you mocking our pain?
Alexandra exclaims, fury lacing her words.
How dare you come here?
Oh my God!
Emma exclaims in horror, jumping up in fear and pointing to something at the back of the church.
What is that?
And while everyone is busy instinctively checking towards the direction she'd been pointing at, she reveals a small vial hidden beneath her sleeve and promptly shoves its content between Damian's parted lips.
What did you just give him?
Cromwell screeches, taking a menacing step towards her, making Emma smirk.
Fuck if I know,
she replies.
Though I'm sure we'll find out any second.
She glances back down at Damian, and I follow her gaze, eyes settling on his peaceful face. However, he doesn't remain peaceful much longer, for this is when his eyes snap open and he gasps, sitting up abruptly into a seated position, his shoulders sagging in relief upon seeing Emma beside him. I drop to my knees, head spinning from the shock, the fear, the hope, the pain. His blue eyes quickly scan the room before settling onto me, and a slow, loving smile grazes Damian's lips, stealing the breath right out of my lungs.
Chloe,
He whispers, sounding so heart-clenchingly relieved you'd think I was the one who'd just come back from the dead. Cries of stupor erupt around the church, and even Cromwell is stunned speechless, staring at his very alive grandson in almost comical stupor.
Oh, look.
Emma comments in a bored tone.
He's alive. Wow, who would have thought?
Damian's eyes reluctantly move away from me to settle on my friend. I instantly miss his gaze, almost like in my mind, he can't be alive if he isn't looking right at me to prove me wrong.
thank you, Emma.
Damian tells her with a small incline of the head.
You did good.
Oh, it was nothing.
My best friend replies, sarcasm lacing her words. And then she swings her arm back and sacks my newly resuscitated lover right in the jaw.
32. 3 days ago, Emma's point of view. I toss and turn, moving from one side of the bed to the other for the 10th time in 5 minutes. I keep telling my body to relax, but there's no use, as every single one of my muscles feels pent up with tense energy. I check my phone again and frown upon finding I still have no message. It's past 1 in the morning now. I can't believe I'm stuck here at home while Harry is out God knows where with Jake and Vivian doing God knows what. He wouldn't even tell me where they were going and had kept things as purposely vague as he could, telling me off in that firm that never fails to make me want to smack him. Who does he think I am? A 5-year-old? I throw a pillow across the room, huffing in annoyance. I may have only recently turned into a werewolf, unlike literally every other one we know, but that doesn't mean I'm some helpless child ill-equipped to leave the house. Kind and patient reassurance surges from our bond, an effort from Harry to make me feel better. But I'm too upset with him to appreciate it, and I concentrate on slamming our mental connection shut for the time being. He absolutely hates it when I do. And I hope it makes him feel as miserable as I do. If only Chloe was around to distract me. But I've been to her room several times and she's nowhere to be found. I realize I haven't seen her very much these past weeks. Or, make that these past few months. I haven't seen her much, ever since Harry and I have been bonded. This bond is turning me into a shit friend on top of a controlling, paranoid girlfriend. Bonds suck. Another good hour passes by and sleep has yet to claim me, when I hear the familiar sound of a car parking near the house. Even from here, I hear Harry's voice from below as he enters the house, whispering to Jake and Vivian. Opening back my bond with Harry only to be assailed by overwhelming distress and anger, which I can tell isn't aimed at me. I jump out of bed, rushing outside our bedroom and hallway down the stairs. What happened? I ask, fearing the worst. Harry's eyes snap upwards towards me, his shoulders sagging briefly as they meet mine. Besides him, Jake opens his mouth to tell me something. His face somber enough for me to know something isn't right, but Harry shuts him up with a look and steps forwards towards me. When he's mere inches away, I debate whether to bury myself in his arms, which I know he'd like nothing more. But I resist, resentment at having been left behind again still vivid.
I need to speak to you, alone.
Harry sighs, sounding resigned. He leads me back to our bedroom, slowly closing the door beside us. Where were you tonight? I ask, crossing my arms defensively. Don't even try to pretend everything is fine. Harry looks slightly exasperated, something I'm used to when we're together. But then his features become impassive and an alarmingly vacant look replaces his usually warm gaze. He's staring at me like I'm a stranger. I don't think he ever looked at me with so much detachment even when we barely knew each other. I can't stand the sight of it. Harry? I ask hesitantly. I search our bond, tugging at our connection in fear, but Harry's side is eerily calm. Peaceful even. In a way that's similar to when he is asleep.
Hello, Emma.
He says in a blank tone that has me rolling my eyes in frustration. Yes, hi, can we get on with what?
You don't remember ever meeting me, but I know you and I need your help. My name is Damian Cromwell.
I jump back in shock, which probably looks comical but doesn't feel like it, as I try to assess Harry's gaze. Is he joking?
You must be wondering what is happening.
Harry goes on, still in that strange absent tone.
Please don't be alarmed.
I approach him cautiously and wave a hand in front of his eyes which remain fixed ahead, empty of recognition. My heart pounds painfully against my ribcage. Harry, please. I shake his shoulders. What's happening? Tell me what's wrong.
Don't worry about your mate. I'm sorry I had to use him to pass this message on to you, but there was no other way. Rest assured, he's perfectly fine.
Let him go, I snap, taking Harry's face into my hand. I want him to look at me with all the love I've carefully allowed myself to grow used to, the absence of which feels like a slap to the face.
Emma, you must listen to me now.
This man who looks like Harry but clearly isn't him commands. What did he say his name was? Damian Cromwell? That sounds vaguely familiar.
Chloe is in danger, and if we're going to save her, I'm going to need your help.
I step away like I've been burnt. I can't stand to touch Harry right now when he isn't himself. And what's this about Chloe?
6 hours ago, Chloe's mate Nate attacked us during our blood bond ceremony.
This is too much information for me at once and I'm left blinking stupidly. Chloe isn't mated with Nate anymore, I protest. And what's a blood ceremony?
In case you're wondering,
Damian something continues like he cannot hear me.
Chloe is still bonded to Nate. She's been hiding it from you and everyone else because she's ashamed and scared of how you'll react.
That does sound like Chloe, I tell myself with a wince.
About 2 months ago, she started working for my grandfather, the vampire king Ian Cromwell. He hired her to be my bodyguard in secret, and nobody knew that's what she was. Apart from him, me and Chloe, who had to pose as my bride during her mission. But the truth is that this job he hired her for was all a pretext for my grandfather to get rid of me for good. He wants me dead. And if you're hearing this message, then I guess it means he's gotten his wish.
Wait. I protest, frowning as I try to take all of this in. Are you saying you're dead?
I'm about to tell you something no one can know until the right moment, and it's going to be crucial that you do everything in your power to get to that right moment, Emma. Chloe's life depends on it. So does mine, though. You might not care much about that.
I scoff. He's not wrong. But if Chloe needs me, then I better listen carefully to what this guy is going to say, just in case this isn't a bad joke.
Right now, everyone, and I do mean everyone, including Chloe, your pack, and my grandfather, believe me to be dead. But I'm very much alive. Or I will be, once you do what I say. Which I hope you will, because there's a very good chance Chloe will be executed as punishment if you don't.
Right. I wince. No pressure.
You must go to this address.
Harry takes out his phone to type in said address and send it to my number.
Inside the left bathroom stall, behind a loose brick, you'll find a small potion bottle my sister Rose left for you earlier today. Retrieve it and keep it hidden. Then, on the day of Chloe's trial, you'll need to retrieve some of her blood. A drop will suffice. Put it inside the bottle. You'll then use it to wake me up. It'll only work if you've added a drop of Chloe's blood to the potion. Don't forget. And don't tell anyone. The less people know about this, the better. My grandfather has the power to make you tell him information if he wishes. If you think me taking control of your mate like this is scary, believe me, he can do much worse.
I shake my head in disbelief. All of this sounds perfectly insane. But most importantly, I won't be able to leave the house without telling Harry, I argue. And you can bet he's never going to let me come to a trial full of vampires. Not without me telling him the truth at the very least, which will be nearly impossible for me to hide from him anyway because…
My message is reaching its end.
Damian says.
I'm counting on you, Emma. Oh, and one last thing. From what Chloe tells me, your mate is quite protective of you. So I've compelled him to comply with all of your requests until the end of the trial. In fact, after this message is over, he'll be going to sleep, so you may go and retrieve the potion immediately. Good luck, and if anything goes awry, your priority is, of course, to protect Chloe from my grandfather. Leave me behind if that means keeping her safe. However, please, if my sister reaches out to you for help, consider granting it to her. I'm sure Chloe will support this demand. I hope to meet you in person soon, Emma.
And on these last words before I can ask anything more, Harry blinks back to awareness. I'm so relieved to see him smiling warmly that I briefly forget about the impending nightmare I was in a second ago to bury my nose into his chest. Harry, I was so worried. I sigh as his arms tighten around me. I breathe him in, his scent making me lightheaded. His fingers slowly running through my hair make me feel safe again, and I'm left wondering if I imagined the entire story about vampires and death and potions. Something crazy just happened, like insane sci-fi movie type of shit, I tell him, stepping away to look at him. He blinks blearily at me, weariness overcoming his curiosity. You started talking nonsense about Chloe and a blood bond ceremony. Harry yawns before slowly nodding for me to continue, except he's swaying on his feet, which is highly suspicious. Are you okay? I ask him, stress coming back to me full force.
What? Fine.
Harry replies, blinking a couple of times.
A little tired.
I curse silently, to which he doesn't even react. That Damian guy did mention he'd be going to sleep. Guess I hadn't been dreaming, I realize with dread, as our unpleasant reality catches up to me. Harry. I snap my fingers in front of his face, hoping to stir him. Stay with me, okay? This is important. He nods, sagging against me to the point where I'm forced to help him sit on our bed to keep him upright. Just out of curiosity, I ask him, worry twisting my gut. How would you feel if I were to accompany you to Chloe's trial with all the vampire you've been very careful not to tell me about the last few weeks? Harry's eyes slowly fall shut.
Whatever you want, darling.
He sighs, right before his head collapses onto a pillow. I watch his features relax into an unnatural slumber. I have no doubt I couldn't wake him from if I tried. Will he even wake up if I don't get Damian Cromwell's stupid potion thing? Damn it, I'm going to have to do exactly what he asked me to do, aren't I? So, I guess no makeup sex then. I mutter, furious, as I watch my unknowing mate sigh peacefully in his sleep.
33. Present day at the trial.
Oh.
Damian winces, grasping at his jaw, sending Emma a wounded look. I rush towards them, miraculously uninterrupted, and wrap my arms around Damian's shoulder, afraid that this is all too good to be true. Damian pulls me closer, and I feel his body trembling against mine slightly.
It's okay.
Damian tells me, cradling my head.
I deserve that.
Heck yeah, you did, you mind-controlling asshole.
Emma screeches, stomping her foot.
Now snap Harry out of it, or I'm forbidding Chloe from seeing you again.
Startled, my gaze snaps to Emma's face, which looks irritated beyond words. What happened to Harry? I ask. Besides me, Damian noticeably winces.
I kind of had to make him let Emma come here today.
He confesses, looking slightly regretful, and even more so when he catches Emma's furious gaze.
Using my powers on him. A little bit. But he was going to be back to normal even if you failed to bring me back to life, Emma, I promise.
He assures her, raising his hands in appeasement as she looks ready to punch him again. You used your powers on Harry. When? I ask, confused before an image of Damian, greeting him at the ball and leading him towards the balcony flashes before my eyes. Wait, so you knew this would happen? My mind is reeling from all the implications.
Damian!
Cromwell's voice interrupts, booming across the walls of the church like a warning.
I can't believe you're alive.
He extends his arms out to Damian like he intends to hug him, making his grandson recoil in horror.
Yeah, no shit.
Damian replies with a sneer.
Seeing how you're the one who's been trying to kill me this entire time.
Cromwell chuckles lightheartedly, though there's a nervous edge to it.
I don't know what Chloe's been telling you, son.
He defends.
But I assure you I have nothing but your best interest at heart.
Besides him, Alexandra's gaze is traveling back and forth between her father and her son, disbelief and stupor marking her features.
Damian?
She murmurs softly.
Are you all right?
He rolls her eyes at her, though I can tell he is slightly touched at her obvious concern. Despite their broken relationship, she's still family, I suppose.
I'm fine, Mother.
He replies in a bored tone. He slowly steps out of his coffin, using my hand for support.
You won't be if you don't fix Harry right this second.
Emma sneers.
Oh, right, sorry.
Damian's gaze travels through the crowd until they settle on Harry.
You're free to stop obeying me now.
He says, making Harry blink slowly and look around him like he's only just become aware of where he is. Jake and Vivian are sending him worried looks, which he promptly ignores, gaze snapping towards Emma and narrowing in anger.
What the hell are you doing here, Emma?
He growls, sounding like he's about to commit a homicide. She beams at him in response, shoulders sagging in obvious relief, before giving him the finger.
Yeah, okay.
Jake scratches his throat.
So, how is the vampire alive? 'Cause we kind of all entertained Emma before, but none of us really thought he'd actually wake up. No offense, Emma.
Well,
Damian slowly steadies himself.
I knew Ian here was going to use Nate to get rid of me. So I used my powers on him and instructed him to only pretend to bite me, while ingesting a potion that would make it look like I was dead for a while.
Damian, what are you saying?
Alexandra says cajolingly.
Your grandfather adores you. He looks out for our family.
No, he doesn't. He looks out for his own interests, namely making sure none of us figures out how he's managed to earn and maintain so much power over the years.
Alexandra frowns, sending her father a careful glance.
Father?
She asks, suspicion slowly grazing her features.
He's the one who's orchestrated all the attempts on my life the previous months.
Damian intervenes, pointing at his grandfather before he can get a word in.
Also that I'd agree to have a bodyguard. A bodyguard he intended for me to fall for and form a blood bond with without anyone knowing she was a werewolf.
Cromwell rolls his eyes, though his posture becomes increasingly defensive.
And why would I do that?
He replies.
If I wanted you dead, why go through all this trouble?
Damian snorts, sending him an affronted look.
That's a good question, actually.
Emma observes, right as Harry arrives to drag her away from the scene, something she allows him to do with surprising little protests. She must have been worried for him. I realize watching her bury her nose into his neck as he cradles her into his arms.
Well, go on then, Damian.
His grandfather edges on, thinking he's won this argument.
Why would I bother planning all of this little scenario? Making you fall for Chloe, as you say, instead of simply killing you myself if I wanted you dead.
The same reason I can't kill you right now.
Damian replies cautiously.
Because you needed Chloe's blood to make me mortal, for me to stay dead. 33, 3 weeks ago, Damian's point of view. I enter my sister's room without knocking, something she detests, which earns me a shoe thrown right at my face that I easily dodge.
Stupid vampire reflexes.
Rose grunts, sending me a dark look. Love you too, my darling baby sister. I reply, opening my arms towards her, in an invitation she royally ignores. I sure as hell wasn't as impertinent when I was 15. I tease, throwing myself on Rose's bed.
You were high all the time when you were 15.
She replies, applying a new dose of foundation to her face carefully before turning towards me again.
What do you think?
She asks, in a neutral tone I know for a fact is hiding a well of insecurities. You don't need all this makeup, I tell her sincerely. You're beautiful.
Half of my face is burnt, Damian. I look like one of the villains from Superman.
You mean Batman?
Whatever. You know who I meant.
My sister replies with a pout. When she was little, my mother tried to have her killed by setting the house she had been kept in on fire. I hadn't been there at the time, and Rose had only made it out alive thanks to our grandfather, who I'd been grateful to ever since for saving her life. Which had made all the more terrible when I'd figure out the man was out to get me about 6 years ago. Rose and I had thought we could trust him, unlike our mother. But he was just as cruel and cunning as she was, perhaps even more so. For, at least, Alexandra never pretended to care about Rose like Ian had.
She cares about you, though.
Rose always argued, resentment lacing her words. I don't bother arguing with her about it anymore, it only aggravates her further. And I guess she's right, in the sense that at least Alexandra never tried to kill me. How do I look? I ask her instead, getting to my feet so she can inspect my outfit more thoroughly.
Like a male model, as always.
She rolls her eyes.
Why? Do you have a hot date or something?
She snorts at the idea. To be fair, in this lifetime she hasn't seen me in a relationship yet, and doesn't take the concept of me in one very seriously. I'm meeting the love of my life tonight, I tell her, feeling no less nervous over the prospect than the last 3 times I'd met Chloe for the first time again. I want to make a good impression. Though I sigh to myself, the only impression I can afford to make is one that precisely matches Ian's expectations as to not raise his suspicions. By some miracle, he hasn't realized I've come back to life for the 4th time now, and if I want Rose, Chloe, and me to escape this hell of a gilded cage alive, I better make damn sure it stays that way. And I'm going to need to act like I'm perfectly indifferent and dismissive of Chloe like I had the first time I'd met her, while she responds with all the kindness and grace I don't deserve to my petty jabs.
The love of your life?
Rose snorts.
Is that a code name for a hooker?
She's not a hooker. I snap defensively. She's my future wife.
You mean bride?
I mean wife. I begin to pace around the room. I intend to be her husband and equal, not her master. I sneer at the word, anticipation racing through me as I check my watch.
Tonight?
Rose asks, curious. No, not tonight. I need her to fall in love with me again first. Rose shakes her head in confusion.
What are you talking about? What do you mean again?
I clench my fist, tension and stress cloying at me hard enough that I can't resist unburdening myself, if only for a short while. You know how some vampire family have special abilities? I ask Rose.
You mean like those European guys who could grow wings and fly?
Yes. I beam at her. Well, we can't do that, but when we die, we don't stay dead.
Yeah, okay, Damian, that's pretty much what any vampire can do.
I roll my eyes. I mean, even when we die as vampires, we don't stay dead. Rose frowns as she searches my expression for any trace of humor. She finds none.
Wait, what?
She asks, doubt lacing her words. I've died before, as a vampire. I explain, meeting her gaze and trying to imprint the look on her face in my mind, to give me strength later on, even when Rose will have forgotten this entire conversation. I fell in love with a girl. She was posing as my bride. It was all just pretend at first until it wasn't anymore and I started drinking from her. I'm pretty sure she loved me back, but I could tell she had secrets. I didn't mind thinking that in time she'd grow to trust me and share them. And maybe she would have. Except we ran out of time. One day we're outside a diner and this guy comes up to us. He gets angry with her, claiming she betrayed him by running away from him, and that she belonged to him, as his mate. I clench my fists as the scumbag's face, twisted in pathetic anger, comes back to me.
His mate?
Rose's eyes widen.
Shifters have mates.
She exclaims immediately because she was always much more clever than I am. Precisely, I tell her.
Your girl's a shifter?
Rose's eyes sparkle in interest.
That's cool.
I didn't know that's what she was nor what it implied, but I learned it the hard way. I explain with a sigh. The guy attacked Chloe, started choking her. I told him to stop. I thought he would, you know, since people generally do what I tell them and all.
Yeah, your compulsion powers are insane. I know you show off.
Well, they didn't work that night. I close my eyes. I remember Chloe's life extinguishing from her eyes, her body collapsing to the ground. He killed her in front of me. I tell Rose, and then when I tried to intervene, he pushed me under a passing car. I snort. He doesn't know it, but the bastard saved my life.
How?
I died. I explain, remembering the pain coursing through my body. And then I woke up, 2 years in the past, on the day I became a vampire. Rose gapes at me for a few seconds.
What?
She asks, shaking her head in disbelief.
Are you kidding me?
Oh, I wish. I begin pacing the room again, remembering the days that followed my awakening. The confusion and fear. The suspicion. How could this happen? Why was I back in time? What was I meant to do? How come no one suspected I could do this? I did my research and realized this ability was a gift our entire bloodline shared, and precisely the reason why our dear old Pops had acquired so much power over the years. If anyone managed to betray or kill him, he'd just wake up in the past and set things up to defeat his enemies the second time around.
Does Mom know about this?
Rose asks, taking this surprisingly well. I doubt it. I think Ian wants to make sure no one but him knows about this to ensure he manages to keep the upper hand at all times.
Is that why he wants you dead?
Rose asks.
Because he knows you know?
No, if he knew that I knew, I wouldn't be here. He wouldn't take any chances and buy his time like he's doing now. He thinks I don't know and that he can get me killed right under everyone's nose, pinning it on the werewolves. On Chloe specifically. The second time I'd met Chloe, I'd been tempted to tell her everything from the start. how I knew about her wolf and her mate, but I'd realized my grandfather seemed intent on nobody finding out, so I couldn't let him on to the fact that I did know. Without him growing suspicious and understanding he was losing the upper hand. Whatever plan he had, I needed to understand. And then, it hit me. When Chloe's mate attacked her, my powers had stopped working. It wasn't long before I figured out a werewolf blood could essentially make a vampire mortal again. I explained to Rose.
So,
Rose snaps her fingers, a habit she has when she tries to think.
Grandpa wanted you to unknowingly drink from the shifter, to make you mortal again, because this would prevent you from coming back to life and figuring out the family secret.
Bingo! I snapped my fingers back at Rose. This would kill two birds with one stone. Get rid of me and have the obvious victim take the blame.
But why does he want you dead so much?
Rose frowns.
I thought he cared about us.
He cares about his power and influence, Rose. I snap, ignoring the sharp betrayal I feel upon the thought. He's been alive for centuries. He doesn't remember ever having feelings. He's just good at faking them. And he hates that everyone is pressuring him into making me the heir, especially as my powers are proving to be as strong as his. He can't stand it.
That's why he wants to kill you?
Rose rolls her eyes.
That's stupid, Damian. You don't even want his title.
Men like him don't understand that. He thinks I'll stab him in the back eventually, because that's exactly what he'd do.
So what's the plan here exactly?
Let everything play out the way he planned, just like I have before. I know how he gets me killed and when. But this time I'll ensure I'm not dead. And unmask him. Publicly.
Okay.
Rose nods bravely.
How can I help?
I pull her into a hug. Forget this entire conversation. Forget I was here. Go to sleep. I tell her, feeling her sag against me. I drive back home in a daze, worry clenching my every nerve. I was acting brave earlier with Rose, but I have no idea if what I'm planning is even going to work. I don't know what happened after my death from Nate's bite at the ball. All I know is that I can't stay trapped into this loop forever, and I can't risk just letting myself be killed without ensuring Chloe's safety from both Nate and my grandfather. She's tied to this now. If anything, I have to make sure she is safe. I wait in my room, resigning myself to change into my pajamas instead of keeping a more fitting outfit, as I know my grandfather doesn't think I expect any visitors tonight.
There's someone I'd like you to meet.
He tells me with a kind, patient smile I now abhor seeing on his face, for it used to bring me so much comfort that it only hurts all the more now that I know the truth. And the truth is that this man I care for and looked up to never held any love for me. All right. I reply, walking unhurriedly towards the living space I know she's in, when I'd like nothing more than to run. Break the door open, sweep Chloe up in my arms and never let her go. Instead, I push the door open, try to ignore how her wide green eyes bring as much joy as they do pain at the idea of losing her again, and declare in a bored tone I hope she doesn't see right through. Good evening, whatever your name is, shall we?
33. Present day at the trial. Cromwell visibly pales, clenching his jaw. Around us, a series of questions erupt in the church, and not just amongst the werewolf crowd. The vampires look curious and apprehensive too, sending each other questioning glances that remain unanswered as Cromwell's silence stretches.
It's over,
Damian says, pulling me behind him as he backs his grandfather into a corner. I'm not sure I understand fully yet.
Your secret's out.
How many times?
Cromwell asks, staring Damian down.
This is my fourth.
He replies, making me frown in confusion.
And your last.
Cromwell sighs before claiming,
Nobody moves.
and similarly to the night Damian had used his powers on the crowd in Marco Rossi's club, the entire population inside the church freezes into still silence.
What are you going to do?
Damian taunts, a smirk grazing his lips.
Kill everyone here?
Oh no.
Cromwell replies, though frowning upon realizing his command had taken hold of him.
I'm just going to kill you once I make sure you've drunk enough of Chloe's blood to stay dead this time. Erase everyone's mind and then pick right where we left off.
Ambitious.
Damian replies, moving us backwards.
We both know I can do it. Your powers are growing impressively quickly, but you can't outmatch me yet, son. Not when you're weak and haven't had any blood for days at least. You can't stop me.
Oh, wasn't going to.
Damian replies.
Chloe will.
Cromwell frowns, gaze snapping towards me.
Her?
Me? I exclaim, before realizing that I can speak and move, something that shouldn't be possible upon Cromwell using his powers on all of us.
You know what happens to a vampire's bride once the blood ceremony is done, Chloe?
Damian asks me, watching his grandfather grit his teeth in obvious displeasure. Go ahead and tell me. I know you're dying too. I reply, trailing his grandfather's movement with my eyes to anticipate a potential attack.
The bride becomes immune to every vampire's compulsion powers but her bondeds.
Damian explains, patting me on the shoulder.
And since I've ensured we'd both be bonded before our ceremony in case it was interrupted too soon.
He winks as Cromwell's face decomposes into a sneer.
That means you're the only human in the entire world who's immune to my grandfather's powers. And you're a werewolf. With superpowered strength. Who knows how to fight?
Damian grins.
Now isn't that convenient, Grandpa?
Cromwell snarls in rage and jumps back, waving a hand towards a group of his vampire staff, currently frozen in time.
You three.
He shouts, his voice snapping them back into awareness.
Get rid of her.
I take a step towards the group of vampires moving to attack, dodging a first blow before kicking my attacker to the stomach.
Chloe, we can't let my grandfather escape.
Damian says, pointing towards Cromwell's retreating figure. We? I grunt, twisting a second vampire's hand and spinning him to the ground.
You know, now's probably a good time as any to tell you that I'm useless in a physical fight.
Damian confesses, as one of his grandfather's minions tries to land a punch to his face before I stop him by throwing myself onto his back. I know Damian. I sigh, tackling his assailer to the ground.
Well, get on with it then. He's getting away.
Damian urges, pointing towards a back door.
But don't kill him. We need him alive. If he dies, he'll come back from the dead and ruin everything.
What? I exclaim, running after Cromwell through a crowd of frozen people.
Yeah, that's the big family secret. When we die, we wake up on the day we first became vampires.
Damian shouts as I jump to grab Cromwell's legs, making him fall to the ground with a grunt. He pulls a knife from under him and aims to plunge it into his neck, but I hold his wrist, trying to pull him off. And, this happened to you? I ask, trying to stay focused on Ian and the knife. You've died before?
Yes, 4 times. We've actually met before, you and I.
You.
Cromwell interrupts, addressing the row of frozen vampires beside us.
Stop her.
I manage to steal the knife out of his hand just in time to parry a blow coming from my right. I throw my elbow back into Ian's stomach, making him groan and fall to his knees before I begin fighting off a new, small crowd of vampires. Damian, I warn, briefly catching his gaze. I'm not going to be able to fight off an entire church full of people. He nods, making his way towards us as quickly as he can. A vampire grabs me by the shoulders, immobilizing me long enough for another to punch my nose, making me grunt. Meanwhile, Damian has managed to reach his grandfather and is now doing his best to pin him to the ground, which is obviously a struggle in his weakened state. Use your powers on him, I yell, kicking an incoming vampire in the jaw.
He's stronger than me.
Damian replies, wincing as Cromwell headbutts him in the nose.
I should have killed you on the day you were born.
The man sneers, before Damian slams his head onto the ground. You can do it, Damian, I urge. Come on. I manage to get rid of the last vampire on the prowl and plunge to Damian's aid, wrapping one arm around Cromwell's shoulders to immobilize him, and the other against his mouth to prevent him from speaking. He struggles, but I am a werewolf, and, by nature, much stronger than him. Make him wake everybody up, I tell Damian, sending him an encouraging look. Or to start with, the werewolves. Damian purses his lips, looking his grandfather in the eye.
You heard her. Wake them up.
He says. Cromwell sneers at him, trying to move away, but I hold him in place.
I don't think it's working.
Damian says, nose starting to bleed. Try again.
Wake them up.
Damian insists, right as Cromwell bites into my hand, making me gasp. Right at this moment, one of the vampires I'd knocked out throws himself at me, making me let go of Cromwell. The knife Damian's grandfather had held before is in his hand, descending right upon me as the vampire aims for my heart.
Wake everybody up now!
Damian barks, panic lacing his words.
Wake up, all of you!
Cromwell says, freezing my attacker in his movement, the knife only grazing my skin as he blinks away. I let out a sigh of relief, catching Damian's terrified gaze. His shoulders slowly sag in relief, as he realizes the entire room is coming back to their senses, and most importantly, my life is no longer in danger.
Go to sleep.
He tells Cromwell, who instantly collapses onto the ground.
What just happened?
I hear Vivian say from somewhere at the back. I don't pay any attention to the many questions echoing around the room, throwing myself in Damian's arms, pure relief coursing through my veins. I help him back to his feet as he clenches his head in pain, the use of his powers having taken a heavy toll on him. Despite it, he smiles softly at me and announces, to everyone in the room, pointing towards his grandfather.
Case in point, he tried to kill me.
And then he lets out a quick, barely audible sigh, and removing his eyes from Ian, to settle them onto my face, he adds,
Court dismissed.
34, present day, 2 weeks after the trial. I take a deep breath and brace myself to leave our house, where the party is currently going full swing. Besides me, Damian stands looking around the room in awe, a hand placed firmly against my back, the other pulling on his sister's arm to prevent her from grabbing a drink from the refreshment table.
Oh no, you don't.
He snaps, earning himself an annoyed glance.
You're not even 16. You don't get to drink until another 2 years.
You mean 5? I ask, momentarily distracted from the upcoming difficult conversation I'm about to have.
We grew up in Europe. 18 will do.
Not in this country, it won't. Damian rolls his eyes.
Okay, then it won't.
He replies, suspiciously innocently, before adding for Rose's sake.
At least be more discreet about it, Rose, for crying out loud.
Says the guy who used to snort coke for... Damian puts his hand on her mouth to shut her up.
Jesus, sis, not in front of the in-laws. They still hate me for using my powers on one of them, remember?
I snort. They don't hate you, I tease, smiling at Harry from across the room. He looks like he's about to head over to us, but Emma pulls him back, sending Damian a murderous glare. Well, they don't all hate you, I correct with a small laugh.
Oh, thanks for your support.
Damian grits out between his teeth.
I feel so much better.
I roll my eyes at him. I'll speak to Emma when I get back, all right? I tell him, squeezing his arm. She'll come around, I promise. Damian frowns, watching his sister walk off to give Emma a warm hug.
Traitor.
He mutters under his breath, before snapping his eyes back to me.
Shall we?
I nod. I'd tried to tell Damian that I wanted to do this alone, but he'd categorically refused, and I didn't blame him. In the days following Ian Cromwell's arrest, he told me all about the previous lifetimes we shared, including the one in which Nate had killed me in front of him, the memory of which had left a bitter mark upon Damian. We walk side by side into the woods, silence settling between us, though not an uncomfortable one. I stop once we reach a familiar tree trunk, which had been cut years ago when I was still a little girl. This used to be my favorite place growing up, one I would escape to when the pressures of the pack became too much. So, pretty much every day. He should be here soon, I tell Damian, and just like I'd expected, we don't wait more than a couple minutes before Nate emerges from the branches against the backdrop of the night.
What is he doing here?
He snarls, upon seeing Damian. This is between you and me, I reply, stepping in front of Damian just in case Nate had it in mind to attack. Leave him out of it.
You leave him out of it.
Nate, I warn, calm down. He sends me a slightly startled look but purses his lips and says nothing else, waiting for me to speak. I have something to ask you, I tell him, making him scoff.
And why would I do anything for you?
He replies, as Damian tenses behind me. I send him a warning glance and turn back to Nate. It's a simple request. You don't have to grant it, I tell him patiently. Though I'd prefer it if you did, but keep in mind that I intend to live my life far away from you, even if you don't.
You mean you want to be with him?
Nate asks, disgust painted all over his features. I do want to be with Damian, I reply truthfully. But he isn't the reason why I want things to be over between us. I want nothing to do with you, even if it wasn't for Damian. Nate rolls his eyes in disbelief.
Really?
He says, ready to add probably another bunch of hurtful words, but I don't care to hear them. I've heard enough for an entire lifetime, if not more. I would like you to reject our bond, Nate, I tell him, making grind his teeth.
No, you don't.
I assure you I do. He crosses his arms, defensively.
Then do it yourself.
I can't, I answer, meeting his gaze. And don't think that's because I still have feelings for you. I can't break our bond because the separation will make you go feral, and you'll end up killing me. And more importantly, anyone who'll stand in your way. I won't have it. Nate's eyebrows shot up in surprise. He looks taken aback for a moment. Though, is he surprised feigned? I'll never know. And I'm done guessing what he means and what he doesn't. It's not my problem anymore.
I wouldn't kill you.
He protests, looking troubled at the idea. Yeah, you would. I swallow, throat a little tight before pursuing. I've seen it happen, with magic. And deep down you know you would. Last time I broke our bond, you went so insane you were willing to go after Harry and Emma.
Harry and Emma aren't you!
Nate protests, though doubt is creeping behind his eyes.
I wouldn't hurt you.
But you already hurt me, I reply, shutting him off. Multiple times. And frankly, Nate, I'm done telling myself I deserve. I don't. Your issues aren't mine to bear. You're the one responsible for them. He opens his mouth, ready to retort his favorite argument, but I raise my finger and interrupt. And don't even try mentioning Evie. I'm sorry about Evie. I'll never forgive myself for it. But me hurting her doesn't earn you the right to hurt me for the rest of our lives. If that's how you feel, then surely you understand why we can't be together. Nate's gaze meets mine. It's funny how those eyes used to make me go weak at the knees. First out of love, then out of fear. It's funny how, now, I feel nothing at all. If you break our bond, it'll be easier for you to keep calm and survive the separation. I go on. I'd like you to do it. I'm asking you to. But whether you do or don't, this is the last time I'm ever speaking to you again. A bond between us won't change my decision. I'll leave the choice up to you. Damian and I walk off, hand in hand, under Nate's scrutinizing gaze upon our backs. I feel it all the way back to the house, in which I finally let my shoulder sag.
Do you think he'll do it?
Damian asks, squeezing my hand encouragingly. I shrug my shoulders, a little shaken still from the altercation though, much less than I thought I would. I hope so, but I meant what I said. If he doesn't, it won't change a thing. I'll keep the connection between us shut until the rest of our days. If he does, though... I meet Damian's blue gaze, which becomes slightly inquisitive. I may need your help for a little while. I confess, hoping he'll understand. I may not love him anymore, but a bond is still a bond, and it's difficult to break. I half expect Damian to protest or feel hurt, but he smiles at me patiently.
Good thing I can bite you into feeling better then.
He replies, wiggling his eyebrows, though there's only tenderness and care in his eyes. I laugh. It's you I need, Damian, I tell him. Your love and presence. He pulls me into his arms, kissing my forehead.
Then you shall have it, my Chloe.
He takes my face into his hands, pulling me towards him for a kiss which I'm eager to grant him, when my eyes catch a familiar silhouette outside in the gardens. Oh my God, I gasp, moving away from Damian to get a better look. What is she doing here? Iris, the witch who'd granted my wish a few weeks back, is walking around the grounds, an expectant look on her face. I'll be right back, I tell Damian, walking over to her and ignoring his protests. The witch isn't paying attention to me, but doesn't seem surprised as I appear in her field of vision.
Hello, Chloe.
Iris, I exclaim, realizing I don't entirely know why I felt the urge to go and greet her. Are you here to see me?
No.
She replies, looking like she isn't going to add anything else. But because I remain in my place, staring her down, she looks at me again and smiles.
You're still alive, that's good.
Yes, Maybe this is why I wanted to speak with her, I realize as I'm about to speak the words. Confirmation that everything was going to be okay. I think I may have found a loophole to escape my fate.
Fate cannot be changed.
Iris shrugs, indifferent.
Though, if you're worried about your mate killing you, you shouldn't. It already happened. You simply don't remember it.
You mean when Damian died and went back into the past as a result? I ask, furrowing my brows. Iris nods.
When do you think your redhead friend is going to make her wish?
She asks me, an impatient look marking her features.
If she doesn't do it soon, I'm going to have to take drastic measures.
My eyes snap inside the house where Vivian is busy talking to an alpha from another pack. What do you mean, drastic measures? I ask worriedly.
I mean that I'll grant something she desires strongly enough, without waiting for her to ask.
Iris says, looking at her feet.
I'm being rather pressured into it, you see.
Again, I'm not sure what she means. Would it work if she really wanted, I don't know, a bowl of spaghetti? Iris purses her lips, the shadow of a smile wanting to appear but not quite getting there.
I suppose.
Okay, well, I'll speak to her. I promise Iris before walking back to the house. I wouldn't want Vivian to unknowingly wish for something problematic and have it granted to her out of nowhere. Which, unfortunately for us, was precisely what would happen, although I wouldn't figure it out for a little while longer.
What was that about?
Damian asks me as I arrive back beside him, patient concern grazing his features. I know he'll respect it and won't insist should I refuse to tell him. I'm suddenly so very grateful for having him in my life that I don't know what to do with it. I love you, you know. I settle on telling him, making him smile.
I do know.
He smiles.
But it's nice to hear it.
And then, the feel of a heavy weight being lifted from my very soul surges through me, making me feel dizzy and lightheaded, confused about what just happened before it clicks into place. I think Nate just rejected our bond, I tell Damian, throwing myself into his arms. I'm free. I await the pain and desolation that comes with a severance to hit me full swing. But Damian presses his lips onto mine, and to my amazement, it never comes. Thank you for watching. Click the thumbnail on your screen to watch the next part. And please consider leaving a like and subscribe to support the author if you enjoyed the story.